Welcome, everybody. Today we are kicking off the Sales Enablement Virtual Summit. We have a fantastic group of experts here to talk about scaling an organization, building an organization, coaching in an organization, thinking through enablement operations, and this idea of coaching. Thanks so much for tuning in. We literally have over 3,000 people registered for the event. Hundreds are tuning into this session. I'm excited to get right in to some of the topics that you as an audience actually submitted and is important to you about sales enablement and how to make companies successful. So without further ado, I want to actually introduce some of our panel members. You, I think, probably know me as I've been emailing you like crazy trying to get you here. I'm Gabe Larson, the Vice President of Growth here at InsideSales.com. But I want to turn it over to each panel member and have them introduce themselves briefly. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. Maybe we can start with you, Kelly.
Thanks, Gabe, and thanks for having us here. We appreciate it. My name is Kelly Fry. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Customer Success at SalesHood. I've been in the industry, enablement industry, about the last 5 years. I was running product marketing at Verizon. The Verizon Connect group, which is the connected vehicle space. We were able to grow the sales force there from about 30 folks up to 120. Then we got bought by Verizon, and then we took it up to about 2,000 sales reps. After a couple years being within the Verizon family, I joined SalesHood just about 8 months ago. So enjoying myself now, bringing enablement to everybody out there and being able to focus on it completely.
Yeah, love you guys over at SalesHood. Thanks, Kelly. Mario, over to you.
Thanks, Gabe. Excited to be here with all of you guys. Mario Martinez Jr., CEO of Vengresso. Spent this is actually my 21st year in corporate business and in sales, 18 years in corporate sales. My last stop was a VP of sales for a software collaboration company. Excited to be here. I now lead Vengresso, which is the largest digital sales service provider globally. And we, in a nutshell, help sellers to create more conversations with more qualified buyers. So excited to be here with you and talk about sales enablement because it is the cornerstone. It is the corner piece, if you would, to be able to make all things flow between sales and marketing and everywhere else. So
love it.
Thank you, Mr. Larson, for having me, my friend.
Yes, Mario, it's always good to have you. Mike, next.
Thank you. So my name is Mike Drapeau. I'm a founding partner of SBI, a management consultancy focused on revenue growth through sales, marketing, pricing, and product. So my role at the firm for the moment is I'm the chief marketing officer, but I've probably kind of held all the different positions in the firm from delivery all the way through into sales. So I look forward. I've worked with most of all the people on this in this august crowd, and I'm looking forward to today's questions.
Yeah, Mike, really appreciate you joining. Love what you guys do over there at SBI. All right, last but not least, Mr. Tim.
Hey, Gabe. Yeah, Tim Reister at Corporate Visions, Chief Strategy Officer. I love that title. It means I can do whatever you want me to do at the moment. Company itself, Corporate Visions, doesn't mean much in name, but what we do is we focus on salespeople with their lips moving. So we consult and train around customer conversations. That means helping companies build their message, turn that message into content, train salespeople in the skills to have that conversation, and then put coaching all around that. So we get to see hundreds of companies every year put their enablement programs together and have learned a lot. So looking forward to sharing that today.
Yeah, again, Corporate Vision, some of the research you guys do is fantastic. So let's dive in here. I want to start big picture. Mario and Mike, I want to start with you two. Mario, maybe I'll pick on you first. You know, sales enablement, you mentioned, is kind of the keystone of a sales of an organization. You've obviously been involved in helping really establish the Sales Enablement Society, Scott Santucci and friend. Why is it so pivotal to an organization's success? Mario, let's start with you.
Yeah, great question, Gabe. You know, if I think back in my years of sales and sales leadership, we commonly thought of there was marketing, and then there was the finance team, and then there was the product team, and then we had the sales team. And everybody was supposed to communicate and work together and kumbaya all together in one single room and make everything a reality for our sellers. The reality is that has been, and in most cases, an epic failure, right? So you've always got this going on within an organization, he said versus she said. And you also have you're responsible and I'm responsible. And if you think about that particular ideology that I just described, I think most leaders who are watching this right now are saying, yes, that's exactly what's going on in our organization. That's exactly what we've seen. And in my opinion, my personal opinion, and you're right, I was one of the founding members, the first 100 to help found the Sales Enablement Society, which is now a very large organization or a group, if you would, of over 4,000 folks. But the focus really is for helping to enable sellers sell more. Right? And most people say, oh, that's training. That's by far not the case, right? It's not just training. Does training fall underneath sales enablement? Absolutely. But it's really to be able to bring together all of those different groups that I just mentioned, from pricing, finance and pricing, to product marketing, to the content organization within marketing, to also the sales organization, and figure out what's really freaking important to be able to get to the salespeople to be able to reach more buyers. And that is really the job of sales enablement. In my opinion, it's an undervalued and undersold role. And really, in my opinion, it is the cornerstone of being able to help a sales organization progress and fast forward. Everything from process, systems, tools, procedures, products, messaging. That's where a lot of what we're seeing come out of sales enablement, or at least should be inside of sales enablement.
Yeah,
So that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah, bringing a lot of organization, a lot of different pieces together. There was so many P's in that statement, Mario. You had process, procedure. I mean, I like it. Mike, I want to go to you. You've been in the business for a long time, obviously founding member at SBI. You guys do all sorts of change management. You work with large organizations. Talk to us about the role of sales enablement and operations, and how you've seen companies win with that. Why is it so important?
Okay, so you snuck a little word operations in there. I was just about to answer your question, and you threw a curveball. So let me just my pre-prepared text now has to be crumpled up. But I will say this, and this is something SBI is talking a lot about now. I would advocate people stop thinking about sales enablement and start thinking about revenue enablement. And the reason is very simple. Just going on what's already been said, is that sales enablement tends to be the football that's kicked around between L&D and the product marketing, solutions marketing folks, and they end up squeezed in the middle. And they're forced to stay in corporate oftentimes when they should be in the field, and they have their wings clipped by the people who want to make sure their PowerPoint slides have the appropriate brand impression on them, and not actually to drive effectiveness, which increasing revenue per head is really their main job. So what we see more and more happening is that they're actually looking at taking marketing's message and assuming control of all of it and delivering it to the field. So they own really the entire womb to tomb from the LDRs who are managing early stage leads all the way through to the field sales reps and everywhere in between. And they are taking what oftentimes comes the academic message from marketing, or the product specific message, which is lacking the customer specifics and the persona-based insights, and they're then being the ones that are then chopping that up into the right bite sizes and executing it. They even oftentimes become the enablement for field marketing, which sometimes lurches into the breach to take up that responsibility, especially overseas where localization is necessary. So for us, the new provocative term is revenue enablement, and I would say you have to kind of conquer that hill before you start trying to have revenue enablement and revenue operations, which is where you get the analytical people, the ones who are sort of trying to take the data and make it sing. That's a different skill set, a different set of people, and they oftentimes are sort of running in parallel together, if that makes sense.
And do you feel like those are two different, does that all roll up into one organization within a company typically, or do you see that operational analytics kind of report over here and right, the revenue enablement go over here?
Well, it kind of depends on company size. I would say below the enterprise, below say 5 to 10,000 employees, they're separate organizations, and they do meet somewhere. Typically, the VP of something. Choose your preference. Usually, they choose VP of Sales Operations or VP of Revenue Operations as their title. But in some cases, in large organizations, they're two completely different stovetypes, and they don't actually interact at all, which is kind of bad, to be honest with you. But if you're doing it right, this senior person is really a peer with the CRO, the CMO, because they can't get their job done without that person being effective and really having executive representation. So gone are the days, I believe, when those people are solely trainers. I mean, they're really the pointy tip of the spear for instance, competitive intelligence, for win-loss analysis, for
Yeah.
market intelligence, and so forth.
Yeah. We may have to swing back to that. 'Cause this interesting intersection between how sales operations interacts with other departments seems to be a problem in most organizations, but let's continue on, and I may come back to that here in just a minute. I wanted to highlight one of the elements of enablement, and this is the concept of coaching and how it fits into an organization's ability to be successful. For whatever reason, it seems like coaching is sometimes missed. It seems like it's sometimes overlooked. Kelly, Tim, you guys play in this arena quite a bit. Or certainly I assume kind of have an opinion on it. What can organizations do to win with coaching? Kelly, maybe we can start with you.
Sure, and thanks. And I apologize, everybody, for being in a car as I'm doing this, but we just got stuck at the airport. So on the way back, and I got to get back for a customer meeting. That's the life of sales, isn't it?
I love it. I love it all the time. Do it.
And I just like to say, Tim, I love that from womb to tomb. I haven't heard that in a while. That's a great term. I love it. So from a coaching perspective, actually the genesis of Saleshood was our CEO and co-founder Eli Cohen was at Salesforce during a time of rapid growth. They went from about 300 million to 3 billion in revenue. And one of the things that Eli observed is a lot of frontline managers weren't really behaving like coaches. They weren't empowered to be coaches. They didn't quite have the skills. They didn't know what to do to coach their sales reps. So he wanted to create a platform that specifically helped support the basis and provided templates for coaching. And so what organizations can do, it's a big part of our philosophy, is help frontline sales managers become better coaches by providing prescribed playbooks for being a coach, providing a platform for having one-on-one meetings that can happen on a regular basis, and allow a sales VP to be able to measure and verify that their sales managers are actually coaching their employees. So really, it's a process around sales managers actually coaching their reps from day one through to when they, I'm not going to say womb to tomb, but as they achieve their success.
I like it. So your big focus is getting a process in, making sure that it actually happens, this manager to rep interaction to drive the results that companies want to see. Tim, let's go to you. I mean, obviously, coaching enablement is kind of your guys' forte. A lot of research about that. Where do you feel like, where do you feel like people should start? How do they start winning with coaching?
Yeah, you start to think about how to divide. There's only so much time to coach.
Yeah.
And so you've got your administrative process-oriented coaching with deal, pipeline, commit. You got that on one side. Then the other side, you got behaviors and skills. And then even literally the conversation, the message, the presentation. So when you think of coaching, it's like, what are you going to ask your manager to do? What are you going to ask them to focus on? And what are you going to have her spend her limited amount of time on? So one of the challenges we see is that you need managers to coach, and then you need ancillary services that help managers and also help salespeople coach themselves, because there's only so much time in the day, and managers are only available at certain times, and salespeople need to be coached at any and all times. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you start to hope that process and funnel and pipe and things like that can be coached in a bit of a self-sufficient way, and that what managers really need to monitor are the behaviors and the skills and the practices and performance attributes of a seller, because at some point, if you don't have the right behaviors and skills, I can tell you to do a lot of stuff with your pipeline or with an active deal and ask you if you're going to commit it. And I can't trust your commit. You don't even have enough in your pipeline. So you can only, rail on those things enough before you finally say, you know what, this person doesn't have the behaviors or skills to even make any of those things happen. So that's the challenge and the tension in coaching that we see. So how are you going to focus your manager's time? And then once you do, then it changes what you get for a manager. Do you have somebody who's a process administrator and runs pipeline calls and commits? Or do you have someone who understands behaviors and skills and makes sure that their performance attributes are where they need to be? Yeah. So that's the decision that I think sales enablement has to figure out in terms of what they're going to ask their managers to do with the limited amount of time they actually have with a rep.
Yeah. Do you feel, I mean, the typical then, I guess to repeat what you're saying, most people do just focus on kind of those lagging indicators. That's where most managers go. But it sounds like you're advocating that you also focus on not just the commits, not just the wins and losses, but also some of the leading things that may be behaviors or skills that lead into that. Is that correct?
Exactly. You
Yeah.
you can't fix the back end. It's too late. So
Hmm.
that's monitoring. For me, what you can fix and coach is the stuff that goes in the front end. If you think somebody's got the juice to actually make that other stuff happen.
Yeah, I like it. It's funny. One of the things you also mentioned is coaching the coach, right? I feel like oftentimes we're talking about having frontline people coach, but we're not really giving, sometimes we don't give them a lot of resources to know how to coach. And I guess that's where enablement probably can come in and maybe play a role and figure out what are you going to have them do and how are you going to have them actually do it. Interesting. Let's continue on. I want to get into this concept. This was actually a question submitted as we kind of polled some of the audience as people registered for the event. Big thing that came up was just scaling. A lot of small companies trying to get bigger, bigger companies get even bigger. Mike, I wanted to just start with you and think about, as you've worked with companies, what is one of the biggest challenges companies are facing with scaling, and how are they overcoming it?
Well, I think it's really the point at which middleware becomes human. Human middleware becomes software middleware.
Yeah.
And what usually happens is when that company is sort of in the mid tier, however you define it, there's usually a handful of trusted people. They've been in the field before, possibly sales managers, or if they're staff, they've been with the company for a long period of time, and they have sort of institutional memory. They have tribal knowledge, and they have a certain trust level, so they're able to get the message out there, able to help affect change in whatever way is necessary. But then you get past them, you scale past, you just get bigger. Too many people want your product. There are too many sellers in the field, and you start hiring people from underneath. And there's that sort of dip, if you will, the chasm that the sales enablement, revenue enablement organization needs to cross. And they typically try to do it with just more human, shove more human middleware into the breach, and they don't get there.
Yeah.
And so what they need to do at that point in time, and sometimes we're hired to do this before it happens, and that's all good. Sometimes we're hired to do this after the human wreckage occurs, and we come back in and try to sweep up the mess and put into place what amounts to call it process, program, procedure, the big P's, 3 P's, and then allow people who have, let's say, a natural ability to be a sales enablement person, but lack the gravitas, they lack the long-standing reputation in the firm, but to be able to be productive as soon as, relatively shortly, and then do what they're supposed to do, which is do things like compress ramp time to productivity, which is sort of the key measure of people who are the new hires, or take existing sellers who are locked in their own legacy mindset and get them to sell the new product, the new platform, the newly acquired asset, etc. And they can then be effective because they have a way to grind the sausage, right? There's a formula they can take advantage of, and they can extend their natural human efforts and abilities to a broader subset of the population.
Interesting. So when it comes down to it, sounds like you're advocating. Do you feel like people run into a lot of the people issue? Leaders try to throw more people at it, and that often is kind of the strategy they deploy to solve some of these problems.
Sure. I mean, think about it. What was successful yesterday has to be what's successful tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they're not used to thinking of sales enablement as a function that requires automation, that requires process and rigor. It's always been Sally, the go-to person who's always trusted. Why can't we just have 3 more of her? And they can't get 3 more of her.
So true. Yeah. That unfortunately we think we can, we just can't. Mario, you've obviously worked with a lot of organizations in a different capacity than Mike. What would you say is challenges you're seeing faced, and how are people overcoming them?
Yeah, great question. So I think of a couple things, especially when I was sitting in the seat. Because of strong competition and the increasing number of buyers that are involved in terms of influencing decisions and where our buyers are at, I always thought of some of the challenges for people in 5 categories. Number 1, does the individual or can the individual help create quickly a targeted prospecting strategy? Why? Because we want to actually find the right prospects to be able to bring the right deals in.
Yeah.
Number 2, Do they understand how to engage with buyers who are making purchasing decisions and where they're making those purchasing decisions at? Number three, can we have a tenured sales rep, or can we get a sales rep who understands how to gain higher commitment to higher prices? Because that's one of the pieces that sales is always looking at, is how do I drive up the ARPU revenue, the actual client value? How do we combat status quo? And number five, how can I build and enhance the right sales skills, for sales growth? So if you think about those 5 categories, oftentimes when we think about scaling a sales organization, if you focus in on those 5, which are fundamentally all focus in on people to revenue, right? The direct correlation between people and revenue. If you think about those things, we have people, processes, systems, and product. Those are some of the things that Mike just talked about. So the question you have to ask yourself to scale is, which comes first? Yeah. People, process, systems, or product? And it's the age-old argument of, is it the chicken or the egg? Which one comes first, right? So I would argue that in order to scale a sales organization, you have to focus in on the who. The who can help you get there. The who can help you with the right targeted prospecting strategy, with helping to focusing in on the buyers and where they're making decisions at, and the buying influence, with gaining higher prices, combating the status quo, and with helping to build, with being able to be trained for the right skill set. So to scale, focus in on the who, the process, the systems, and the product. That can come later if you've got the right who that's coming along with you.
Yeah, interesting. Focus on the who. I like kind of the people, process, technology, product. Yeah, you're right. It's as you and Mike both alluded, it can't just be, sometimes we want to throw the shiny object of technology at it. Sometimes we want to throw people at it. And it often is something that is working as a machine interchangeably, these different parts of an organization. This may be a little bit of a similar question. And so it might be good to throw it in here with, I'm going to turn it over to Tim and Kelly here. A lot of stats out there saying sales reps are not hitting quota, that the quota attainment numbers are fairly low, looking at, a couple different industry publications. I don't want to necessarily go in there, but I think we could all admit we'd like to have more sales reps hit their number. When we think about that, and Tim, maybe we can start with you. Why do you think reps are not, for the most part, hitting their number, and what can organizations do to support it better?
Well, so I look at the theory of constraints, and one of the things we've been taking a look at here is that, where's the constraint? Do they not have enough pipeline to support their ongoing close rate, or do they have a lot of proposals in the pipeline and they're getting constipated, right? The proposals are going in, but they're not coming out. So now you got a conversion problem. Right. So you either got a pipeline problem, right? Yeah. Or you got a conversion or proposal problem. Or maybe, we're selling stuff, but at a too low a profit. There you got a profitability problem. I feel like we got to look at those KPIs. Mm-hmm. We have enough pipeline based on our close rate. Are we closing things, right? Or are they profitable? And start to look at the violent offenders and take each person and say, which of these KPIs are you struggling with? And do more, what I like to call just-in-time training and intervention, as opposed to just-in-case training. Just-in-case training says, hey, everybody take this because we all could use it. Just-in-time training says, you suck at this. Based on your close rate, you aren't going to get there. Let's focus on this. So I think sales enablement needs to think more situationally, just-in-time, about the gaps or areas. But I'm going to say this as a final thought on this is, I think you need fewer salespeople. I think what we're seeing is you put your best salespeople on your best leads and your best customers. You take out the people who just can't perform. And what you do is you give these salespeople more support. So we have more, put more outbound opportunity managers and campaign people against the cold calling and prospecting and qualifying both of inbound and outbound for that salesperson. What they did last year in 2 million, they could probably do in 5 million. Because I find the best reps actually have more time in their day that they could be doing things. But why not have them do things on real leads and accounts instead of dialing for dollars? And take those people who just simply can't get anything into the funnel or close, just out. You're out. And what we start to see is smaller sales organizations selling more, and you put the support around those best reps. I think the assumption is that the quota problem is every individual rep problem. And I'm like, no, the first problem with quotas is you aren't giving the best leads and the best opportunities to your best people, and then putting ancillary support around them. You're spending tons of money on people who just can't cut it. And and everybody says, you got to find better talent. Hey, there's just not a lot of great talent out there. So make the most of your best talent by putting the support around it, and stop beating your head against the wall trying to enable people who just aren't going to get there.
Got it. So actually put your money where your mouth is. A little more support on the reps that are actually winning to free them up to actually do what they do best, which is close.
We've discovered reps who hit quota with this support can still hit quota, even when their quota is higher, because they're quota hitters. Quota hitters are quota hitters. Give them the support, and they can probably hit more quota.
Yeah, but instead of doing 2, maybe could they do double? Could they do 5? Kelly, what would you add to this concept of reps not hitting quota, and what can organizations do to change that?
Yeah, I think, I'm learning another good term. I love pipeline constipation. I'm writing all these down. This is awesome.
You weren't supposed to repeat that. You weren't supposed to repeat that.
I love it. But, it's kind of interesting when you look at overall sales productivity and this massive proliferation we've had in sales tools, sales and marketing tools over the last couple of years. You haven't really improvement really in sales productivity. So I think there's something to be said that what Tim was talking about is, the law of scarcity, right? If you have less reps fighting for more business, the best ones are going to rise and they'll be more successful. In our business, we always look at trying to help reps diagnose where they're having some issues, right? Is that pipeline coverage? Is it deal velocity? Is it the average deal value, deal size that they're doing, ARPU? Whatever wherever they're struggling or having some issues, try and help them diagnose that, provide a prescription or prescribe a toolkit, a methodology for them to apply in their deals, help them apply that in their business with better coaching and better playbooks, and then ultimately we need to measure and reinforce that with the individual sales reps, getting everything into a quantifiable level. So we know as some reps, measuring everything and trying to help reps with better prescriptions, what we're trying to do.
Interesting. You only cut out just a little bit. I can't believe how good your connection is.
Sorry.
It's a fairly good connection for driving around wherever you're driving around. So kudos on that.
I'm in LA.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I got to give it to you. I thought it'd be a lot worse, but I think what he's arguing for, and Tim, I like this concept of, Tim, I think you used the word just in case versus just in time. Sometimes we train to train, but man, if you can do train for a purpose and find the actual problem, diagnose, and then dive into it, that certainly is going to make a bigger difference than just kind of this blanket statement. Let's finish up. I want to give each of you kind of an opportunity to do closing statements. My thought for this topic was thinking around the future of sales. We always talk about leaders need to stay on top of the trends, and sales enablement I don't think is any different, sales enablement or operations. As you think about this audience who's come today, a lot of sales enablement operations, people who play in kind of the coaching and training realm, what advice would you have for them? Either just kind of takeaway things, guys, you need to do this in order to win, or things that you feel like are big trends coming up in the next 3 to 5 years that they ought to have on their front of mind in order to start really winning with it. So 1 is just words of wisdom, or 2 is top trends that you feel like people should be thinking about and executing on. Mike, maybe we can start with you.
Sorry, I got a little bit of bad audio. All right, so, and this is going to sound a little bit of Back to the Future-ish, but what I would tell you is where I have seen, if I was going to walk into any sales enablement department of any medium-sized or large-sized company, the single factor I can say that is present in those that are successful is this: staff gets in the field. Simple as that. Yeah. Everything else helps here, helps there, but if your staff, no matter how smart they are and how well positioned and seasoned and they've been there, done that, if they're not in the field, they're not going in on sales calls, they're not meeting prospects and customers, if they're not going to the offices on a Tuesday night after people come in, if they're not sitting in the bullpen of the inside sales team, whatever it is, if they're not in the field, they will not be effective. Everything else is sort of just window dressing along that.
Ancillary. Interesting. Great to the point, and so often forgotten. You just get busy with the whirlwind and you forget that your customer, which happens to be your internal people, if you don't know what they're doing, you just can't help them. I love that. Let's go to Mario next. Mario, what would you add to that? Oh, Mario, we got you on mute, man. Back on.
Let's repeat that over again.
You're just
Great
fine.
point there, Mike. So I was going to say, or what I was trying to say was, if I look at the future of sales enablement and how organizations can capitalize on that, I would say this is going to sound cliche, but there's a point to this, right? Really, if I were to say one thing, be focused on more time selling and less time doing other crap. Right. And that's super cliche to say because everybody's focusing on that. Everybody knows that that's the situation there with respects to sales. But if I were to look at a couple of things from a technological standpoint that I believe sales enablement should really be focused on, and that is looking at information technology that helps salespeople understand buying intent or buying signals quicker, faster, and better. Real-time data points that basically says if Tim Reister is my buyer, Tim is interested in something that I have to give, reach out and engage with Tim, right? And that's where we run into a lot of problems, which is a lot of sales reps are just throwing as much as they can on the wall and seeing whatever sticks. And we've got to move beyond that from a technology standpoint. I also am going to say something that is not very popular. And many people will vehemently disagree with me, especially sales leaders. But I believe that oftentimes the sales enablement professionals that we put into the roles are not necessarily the right people that should be there. And this is very controversial because I know I have a lot of sales enablement leaders that are listening in. But if you were to take your best sales people and pay them the same amount of money to help replicate and duplicate what they are doing without even knowing that they're doing, and bring them into that sales enablement role or function, whether it's a small period of time, a large period of time, you can now help to scale out some of those best practices and things and or the crap that they just stopped listening to. Yeah. And you can figure out some of those things that are going on inside your organization. So my recommendation is to take some of your best sales folks and give them the power to enable the rest of the sales organization to be just like them.
Okay. Watch out. Make sure you get the right people in the role. That may be controversial, but you're right. I assume it's very important. Kelly, let's go to you. Top trends or words of wisdom for this kind of sales enablement sales audience.
Yeah, and I'll be brief because just in case my cellular goes in and out, but those were good advice, that was good advice from the folks on the call. What I would suggest is that there's going to continue to be more automation of helping the rep in real time make the right decision. So it'll be a little bit more of a prescriptive approach. You're at this stage with this type of customer, do this, take this type of coaching at this moment in time to help you move that deal along. So I think we'll see more automation. We'll also see, I agree that there's going to be, I think, less people on the outside with the bigger deals. I think there'll be more people on the inside in BDR. So applying sales enablement to inside teams, BDR teams, and customer success and account management teams are something we're going to continue to see a trend towards.
Got it. So more enablement across the entire organization there. Tim, last but not least, we'll have you wrap it.
So I take my cue from the fact that salespeople are still humans. And even though we have a lot of technology, we want them to learn things and adopt things and then use things. And human beings are what I like to call deficit learners. They're only willing to learn, and they learn best when they find themselves in a deficit for something. And we tend to put programs out, put them on calendars, put out curriculum. And I just had an experience with someone at IBM, and the company shall remain nameless, but I just named them. And their challenge was, we're having a problem in this particular area. We need more pipeline. We're low on our number. Sure. And they were starting to plan for training at their kickoff in February. And the sales leader we were working with said, I can't wait till February. We got to stand up a program now. So they actually built a new message around this product, and they're having everybody get online and record themselves doing this message, certifying on this message, so they can start doing it now. And I think the issue is you're in a deficit now, you're ready to learn, not later when it's too late. So sales enablement's got to be much more nimble to solve problems, not just try to stand up programs.
Yeah.
They got to be able to situationally stand up solve a problem and put something in place, get it out there, have an impact, take it down, find the next thing, because curriculums and calendars and catalogs are the way of the past. I think solving problems, standing up something so that you can actually have a business impact on something you're trying to accomplish is the way enablement's going to work, because ultimately you're helping people who are ready to learn because they're in deficit and now they want something. They don't want it when you want it. They want it when they want it.
I love it. I love it. Interesting. Yeah, don't just stand up programs. Make sure you solve problems. Probably a good way to wrap. Guys, thanks so much for joining. Really interesting take on the market, sales, ops, enablement, coaching, etc. We appreciate you taking some time. Kelly, Mario, Mike, and Tim. For the audience, make sure you cap the rest of the sessions throughout the day. You'll be hearing from other experts, all to boost this concept of sales enablement and operations. So thank you again for joining, everybody, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today. Thanks, everybody.